How Awful Love Felt, Part 2. We started to talk about perhaps continuing with our relationship after I got married, but betraying B like that would not be right. We were already lying to her and everyone else. So then one day we were alone at my house. My parents had gone to church and would be back in a couple of hours, meaning we would get some much needed quality time together. I was getting married in a few days, but I did not feel like I could go on with it. Then he suggested that I go with him when he left the country. He decided that he could not stay here and see me with anyone else, so he was going to leave as soon as I got married. He nearly left me many times, but I stopped him. Sometimes, I even considered leaving with him. "You are so lost in your thoughts. Here, eat something," I chuckled as I gave him some food to eat. He gave me a dazzling smile that warmed me up. He snapped out of it, and I had him with me once again. "Do you believe in hell?" I asked. "From what I went through in the military, I do, but it's not some mystical place. It is here, on Earth." His eyes clouded over when he said that. "And you're going back?" I asked. "Not to hell. To my family, my comrades. Either way, you are thinking of us, right? How are we sinning in the eyes of some people?" "Yes, how could something pure like love be considered a sin? I do not understand." "You do not have to. Let us quit talking about the future. I want to spend more time with you. That is why I'm here." He stood up and took my hand, a look of mischief in his eyes. I followed him, already feeling the desire for him in the pits of my whole being. We laid down on my bed and took our time savoring each other for the next hour or so. It was when we were deep in an embrace that we heard a scream. My mother shouted that it was an abomination. I quickly got away from Elliot, but the damage was done. B, my mother, and my father were standing in my room. My throat dried up. I had absolutely nothing to say. My father had a murderous look on his face. I only felt fear because he dragged me towards him and landed a blow to my stomach. I doubled over and sunk to the floor. There I stayed while there was a commotion. There was a mixture of anger and confusion along with tears. My father dragged me up and looked me in the eyes. I will never forget the look in his eyes. Pure hate. "You are a disappointment to me and this whole community. No son of mine will lay with a man. This is simple. We are going to take you to the community. I cannot live with this shame." "Oh no, we would not survive. How could they do something like that to their son? When honor takes over your love for a child, are you still their parent?" "No, they will kill him. We have to inform the police," my mother said. She could not even look at me. I felt so scared and betrayed by them. So then, they took us to the police station. We were put in separate cells. Maybe we would go to trial soon, or we would rot there. Then one day, I heard that someone had posted bail for me. I thought that maybe it was my parents. So I went back home only to find the door slammed in my face. Elliot was nowhere to be found. Believe me, I searched, but it seemed as if he had vanished in the thin air. The loss that I felt was unlike any other. Because of the stupid system, I had lost the love of my life. I had nothing to contact him with, just my bleeding heart. I called out for him, but he never appeared. I had nothing left for me in that place, so I decided to start over somewhere new. I was going to find the love of my life, no matter what it took. I had little money saved up in my bank. It was supposed to be used for buying a house after I got married. That was now out of the question. Heartbroken as I was, I still had hope that Elliot would come back for me. I took my money and I moved to the city, where I stayed for a few months. I ended up leaving the country and furthering my studies for a few years. Then, when I felt as if I was accomplished, I did what I always had wanted and traveled overseas. I had only gotten one letter from Elliot. He said that he would find a way to get to me, but it was difficult for him to do anything at that point. He was on probation for missing a tour. He had been the one who bailed me out. The letter ceased, and I never knew where he was. Every possible scenario went through my head, but it did not stop the pain I was feeling. I loved him with all my heart, and now I seem to have lost him. For years after, I was now staying in the new country. I focused on my career and nothing else. Meeting intelligent people and finally being free was just a distraction from the pain that I was feeling. The same pain and loneliness I felt every night when I thought of Elliot and where he had gone. I had lovers, thinking that they would make me forget and falling in love again was possible, but it was not. No one could get me like Elliot. All I longed for was just a mere touch. With the advancement of technology over the years, it was now possible to find people more easily, so for a while I searched for him. but it was like he had never existed. Then, as if it was fated, I saw him. He was aged, but there was no mistaking him. His face was ingrained into my thoughts. It was just a ghostly silhouette passing me on the street, that I could have missed it if I was not paying attention. But that man was Elliot. I called out, but he was gone. The rush of life, passion, and memories threatened to make me implode. I could almost feel his touch and hear his laugh once again. I took that same route for a week, hoping to bump into him, but I failed at every turn. It was like I was chasing a ghost, until one day I bumped into that ghost. I was looking down at my phone, when suddenly I felt hot liquid sink into my skin. "I'm so sorry, are you okay?" a male voice said, and I looked up. It was Elliot. I brought him in for an embrace, but he shook me off immediately. "What the hell, dude?" I said, "I'm sorry, why are you being weird?" I was confused. Maybe he did not recognize me. "Elliot, it's me, Sam," I said, laughing. He just stared at me blankly. "I do not know you, and my name is not Elliot," he said, sidestepping me and walking away. I grabbed his arm in desperation. There had to be something wrong with him. How could he have easily forgotten me? My words came out in an illogical sequence as I tried to make him remember. "My name is not Elliot, I'm Rowan. I'm sorry, but I'm not who you're looking for." He shook my hand off and started to walk away. I was dismayed. How could the love of my life forget me just like that? It was simply not right. I developed an obsession with him, trying to figure out if he was lying. He was completely different from the man I knew. Even his mannerisms were not the same. The few times that I saw him, everything about him was different. Maybe he had just lost his memory? I wanted for him to be my Elliot so badly. One day, he came up to me while I was at the coffee shop. I was not there looking for him, he just found me. "Hey, I'm not the Elliot you speak of, but I'm curious to know why you think I am him," he said. "Hi, I'm Sam. You want to take a seat?" I asked. He sat across from me and I began telling him everything that had happened. I expected him to suddenly say he remembered, but he sat quietly and listened to my story as if he was hearing it for the first time. "I'm sorry about this. Do you know what country he went to?" he asked. "No, we only exchanged a few brief letters, and after that I moved out of the country, and we lost contact. All I need to do is see him. Get some sort of closure," I said. It might have been difficult to accept, but the man across from me was not him. His eyes were not the same, now that I was closer to him. "This might be a long shot, but I work in archives. If you tell me all you know about him, I might be able to find something out for you," he said. "But why would you do something like that for a stranger?" I was on the verge of tears, at the kindness of a stranger. "I faced a lot of challenges when I came out. I cannot imagine what it was like to be in a country where it's illegal to be gay," he said, touching my hand reassuringly. His kindness calmed a bit of madness that had been clawing at me for the past 10 years. "Thank you. Let me know how much you charge. This is my card," I said, taking out my card. "You are a psychologist?" he asked. "Yes, I used to be a teacher long ago," I said. "You do not have to pay me. It'll be just a favor," he said. "I will owe you one then," I nodded. Over the next few days, we would meet occasionally, and he would tell me about the leads that he got. In between that, we became friends. He was a very interesting person. He liked sports and the outdoors, so I was surprised at his type of job. "History interests me, and so do sports. Many are surprised when they find that out," he explained. We kept on hitting dead ends when we tried to find Elliot, who seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. So the investigation kind of fell into the background, and we started to spend more time with each other. I got to know his friends, and we would hang out with them sometimes. I usually ended up being his platonic date to some events because he was the single one. Everyone else had already settled down and had kids. He eventually opened up to me about how he found it difficult to commit because he was previously in a toxic relationship. We bonded during that time, and I tried my best to help him face what he had kept hitting deep within for years. I understood exactly what he was going through because I had been holding on to someone for a while. Months went by and I stopped prioritizing looking for Elliot as much because I was falling for Rowan. I never thought I would love another soul after Elliot. Not for lack of trying. I just could not open up my heart to anyone else. I started to think about him daily until I finally gave in and asked him out on a date. I was hardly romantic, so my asking him out went something like this. "Hey, do you want to go for dinner with me?" "Sure, just us?" "Yes, like a date." I could not help being direct. I did not have that much experience with love after all, so who could blame me? Luckily, Rowan felt the same way and agreed to go on a date with me. There had been chemistry and a few subtle touches. I was kind of growing older, so I did not think I had the time to be asking myself if he liked me or not, and our first date was a success. It was so much easier to be open about how we felt. I could not stop smiling throughout the whole evening. Afterwards, we shared a kiss that made me all warm and fuzzy on the inside. We texted until late into the night, even though we both had to go to work the following day. But then, when I texted him, asking him for another date later that week, he told me something that nearly knocked me off my feet. "Rowan, I have found Elliot." The ghost of my past had just returned, and I did not know how to feel. I canceled the rest of my appointments for that day and spent the day in my office, thinking of the past. It was vivid, as if it had happened yesterday, the fresh young love. Just when my heart was learning to accept that I could not have him back, and I was opening up to Rowan, this happened. I texted him back later on, asking him where he was. The next day, I met him at a cafe. The same one where we had spoken for the second time. He handed me an envelope, with Elliot's name on it. I opened it, not knowing how to feel. It was an old newspaper clipping, and there was his picture. He had become a general and was among the fallen in battle from long ago. He is gone. That was all I could say. It was so final. I think part of me had known. I wish I could have been able to say goodbye, but death was not kind. Thank you for finding out. I am at peace now, I said. I would do anything for you, and even if he was alive, I would have helped you find him. Even if it meant that I would lose you. He held my hand. I care for you. You do not have to say it back, but the few months that I have spent with you have been the best. Even if we found him alive, he is part of my past. You have no idea what that means to me, he smiled. He was right. He was not Elliot. Being with him would not mean that I loved Elliot any less. I would always love him, but I was no longer the same person. Finding closure was all that I need in the end. Things between Rowan and I went well after that. We hung out a lot more, cuddled, and shared memories. I got to meet his mother, who was the only family member still speaking to him. She was such a kind woman and treated me like her own son. It was nice to be finally accepted and to have a family of my own. Things between us accelerated pretty quickly because before we were even dating, I knew him. He knew the pain I had gone through to get to such an accomplished point in my life, and that made me love him even more. The little things like being able to hold his hand in public and display affection to him meant a lot. I did not have to hide that he was the man that I was in love with, and it did not take time before we decided that we were ready to get married. I did not hesitate to say yes when he proposed to me. There had always been a connection between us from the day we laid our eyes on each other. I did not even compare him to Elliot. He was my Rowan, the man who saved my lonely heart. It was a small ceremony in court, with 2 witnesses, as we were both very simple people. I promised to love you in the light and in the darkness, to protect your heart and not harm it. It was part of his vows. And when the rings were on our fingers, our souls bound. I felt free. I had escaped the prison that was my country, healed from the loss of my first love, and finally, I was at peace. I could not help thinking of the people I had left behind in my country, who had to hide all their lives or face jail. I will always cherish my wedding day because that was the day being gay was legalized in my home country. I had not been checking the news for the past few days. It was Rowan, who had handed me the phone just as our after party started. I got very emotional, but he held me close. Hopefully, with the legalization of being gay, more people would start coming out and being happy. I was lucky to get out and be in a country where I could love who I wanted. Maybe it was a mirage, but there on the horizon, I could see a rainbow for everyone who had been hiding for all those years. One day, we will return. I know you miss your country, Rowan said, holding me. With our kids? With our children. Yes, my love. He kissed me on the head. The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.